Hello and welcome back to Goblin Gaming. We're here today in Diablo 4 and we're going to be looking at the Rushing Claw build that I was developing over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I posted a video about a week or so ago, and I think like the day after, like 3 or 4 other big YouTubers posted their versions. Oh well. I've been really enjoying this. The build has changed quite a bit since I first made it, so I want to share with you the new changes and things I found. Using some semi-unusual tech in here and some unusual items, so hopefully you guys enjoy this variant on it. This one doesn't use thorns, it's just pure poison and multiplicative explosion damage with Jaguar Spirit Hall, so it's a lot of fun. See some gameplay going on right now. That's a 120 clear. It takes about 4 to 5 minutes to do a 120 on this build. Speed running 110s, and the highest I've cleared so far is 130, but I'm sure it could go higher. Anywho, with that said, let's go ahead and get into it and start looking at the build. You can see the aspects are listed on the left. We'll go into them in more detail, but if you want to take a moment and read them as we're going through, feel free to do so. We are going to be looking at the basic skill Rock Splitter as what we're putting our points into here. Just go ahead and put all your points into it and then put a point into Enhanced Rock Splitter. Enhanced Rock Splitter will actually proc that block, or will actually increase your block chance even though you don't have it on your bars and you're not actually using it. So that's kind of a weird nuance of Rock Splitter, but it works. So just go ahead and do that. We're not using any basic skills, we're not using any core skills, so we just skip right past that and we come down to focus skills. We're going to take a point into Toxic Skin, which is going to make it so that you're leaving a poison trail on the ground and you're able to walk unhindered through enemies, which is pretty dope. It also gives you the multiplier for unrestrained power 100% of the time, because you're always going to be unhindered, because you're always going to have Toxic Skin going. In addition to that, we are also going to have it popping critical hits every second, detonating our poison that's on the target. So the more poison we can stack on the target, the higher we can detonate it, and we have an auto detonator with Toxic Skin. This is your main damage dealer, and we're going to be focusing quite a bit of item economy on this. On the passives on this tree, we're going to grab Focal Point. This is just a pathway to get up to Apex, which is going to give us a multiplier versus vulnerable enemies, doubled versus elites. Because we're using the Shroud of, I can't remember what it's called, Shroud of Overpoweredness, Shroud of False Death, we are actually getting the extra talent point in there, so it's 4 instead of 3. If you don't have Shroud of False Death yet, no big deal. Just use a legendary chest and enchant it with any utility aspect that increases your damage, or if you want to go more defensively, you can use the incision aspect as well. Anywho, so Apex is going to give us extra damage versus vulnerable enemies. We're going to put a point into Mirage, and then we're going to put in 3 points into Unrestrained Power. This will be up 100% of the time, as we said, because of the Toxic Skin, so yay, that's nice. We're also going to be putting in 3 points into Swift. This is actually really important because it will help your cooldowns for both your Hunter and your Rushing Claw. We'll explain that Hunter part in just a little bit, but it's because of an item we're using. Alright, moving down into the defensive tree, we're going to put a single point into Armored Hide and a single point into Enhanced Armored Hide. This makes it that whenever we pop Armored Hide, we're going to be automatically topped off to our maximum resolve stacks, which is great. And on top of that, we're going to have 100% block chance, which ends up being a huge damage multiplier because of the aspect of redirected force that you can see on the left there. Counterattack, we're going to put a single point into as well, and then we're going to put a point into Enhanced Counterattack and a point into Reinforced Counterattack. By doing this, it's going to make it so that when there are enemies all around us, which there will be almost always, we're going to get a multiplicative damage, crit damage multiplier for close enemies. So it's really good, does a lot of extra damage, and it also makes sure that we never get hit because we're going to be keeping counterattack activated pretty much on cooldown. You could, if you wanted to build a bit more defensively, not use this at all and just rely on Armored Hide, because that will up your damage quite a bit, because whenever you block anything with redirected force over here, it's actually going to give you even more bonus. It's going to double that bonus. So if you want to go even more offensive, just don't hit your counterattack button and hit these buttons instead. That's what I do for speed farming. But as far as like pushing goes, I still use counterattack just to make sure I always stay alive. But yeah, I mean, maybe min-maxing it, you want to just use Armored Hide. I'm not entirely sure. Anywho, Scourge we're going to take a single point into as well, and then we're going to take Enhanced Scourge so that whenever we hit enemies that are crowd controlled, we get a big multiplicative damage multiplier for all of our damage. This is great because things are going to be crowd controlled pretty much perpetually, and we'll talk about why in a few minutes here, but it's basically just giving us a big bonus all the time. And then adaptable Scourge, so we can heal the extra life if we happen to be losing life, and to proc the nourishment effect, which is going to make it that whenever we heal, we get a 12x damage over time multiplier, or poison damage over time multiplier, which is great. 1 point into anti-venom gets us down there, just ups our max resistance a little bit, yay. And then of course we have our additional passive points from the Shroud of False Death. Moving down into potency, we're going to take 3 points into resilient in order to get us even more max HP whenever we tap that armored hide button. So that's going to give us more damage through one of our Paragon nodes that we're going to talk about in a minute here. Just kind of a no-brainer, take on every build kind of thing. We're going to put 3 points into Vehemence. Not sure how to pronounce that. Vehemence? Not sure. Anyway, it's going to give us a multiplier on damage of 40x for a Russian Claw, which we're also going to take the subsequent thing that gives us up to 80x additional damage with Russian Claw, so it should actually end up hitting pretty decently. That said, we're not using Russian Claw as our main damage dealer here anymore, so we're only putting a single point into it. And then we also want to take the talent point that makes it so whenever we get down to 1 stack and we use it, it'll consume 4 ferocity to recharge the stacks. This does not happen very often with this build, so you could possibly drop that off altogether. I haven't tried doing that yet, but it is possible because we're going to be refreshing those stacks constantly with the Hunter, and our Hunter is on an abnormally low cooldown due to one of our uniques. Then we're also going to put a point into Ravenous, which is going to just give us a little bit extra damage with our Centipede skills. But more importantly, we're going to put 3 points into Potent, and we're going to get extra ranks of this through an item. This will massively up the damage of this. By default, Potent 3 points is just 30x multiplier, but with our neck piece that we're boosting it up further, we're getting up to 100x, which is just absolutely insane. And that's all damage taken, not just Jaguar skills. Jaguar skills is what procs the increased damage taken, but everything gets the 100x. So that's your Poison Skin, that's your Jaguar Spirit Haul, that's your Scourge, it's everything. And then we're going to put 3 points into Furnace so that we increase our critical strike damage even further per stack of ferocity. We'll be sitting at about, I can't remember if it's 13 or 14 stacks of ferocity pretty much perpetually. But anyway, you're looking at like a 26 to 28x crit strike damage multiplier on top of all the other multipliers we're going to have just from Furnace. It's pretty strong. Coming down into the ultimate tree, you're going to want to make sure you put 5 points into the Hunter. It is actually a large damage dealer with this build, and we're of course going to put the subsequent points in to make it so that it stacks, it like tops off our ferocity whenever we hit it, and we're going to do 100x damage to enemies that are injured. Notice it doesn't say that the Hunter is going to do 100x. It says the Hunter overfills your ferocity by 4, so it takes your cap and increases it by 4, and causes you to deal 100x increased damage to injured enemies. That means it's actually causing that toxic skin to do 100x too. So very, very strong. You want to be using this all the time. Use it on cooldown. Keep it up all the time. It's going to be a big damage multiplier. In addition to that, we're going to take 3 points into Resolution, which is going to make Hunter an even bigger damage multiplier because we're going to get a 20x increased damage versus elites whenever we hit Hunter, and it's doubled versus a single mob, so like a boss, or if you're fighting a single elite, it's twice as strong. We're going to take 1 pathway point in Sustenance, doesn't really matter, to get down to Intricacy, which is going to make it so that whenever we cast an ultimate skill, the last different potency, defensive, or focus skill you cast is reset and can be cast for free up to 4 times. Notice that it does say potency and Rushing Claw's potency. That's why I said you don't necessarily need this point here. You might be able to put that somewhere else, eke out a little bit more damage, because every time you ult, it's going to be refreshing those stacks, and we're going to temper on extra charges. So we'll have 9 to 10 charges at all times, and you'll stay topped off on it. It's not a big deal. You can also use it strategically to stagger a boss with Scourge. So you can stop Rushing Claw for a second, Scourge, then ult, and get 4 Scourges to hit on that boss. Pretty handy. Yeah, so that's another option. Spiritual Attunement, it's going to increase our vigor. Doesn't matter, we're not using vigor on this build. It's just a pathway to get to supremacy. But this is absolutely massive. Because we're getting extra item contribution point, or extra ranks due to an item, it's at 11 points. It can actually go higher. I whiffed my final masterwork on it, so I only got 2 out of 3 masterworks, so it could even be higher than this. But basically what it does is whenever we cast an ultimate, it's gonna, well, whenever the ultimate ends, it's gonna give us 5 stacks of supremacy. And whenever we kill enemies while the ultimate is active, it also gives us stacks of supremacy. We can have up to 30 stacks of supremacy at once, which is going to give us 110x multiplier on all of our damage. Absolutely bonkers. Moving down into the key passive, we're going to take Noxious Resonance so that our poison damage always detonates whenever a crit hits, and it's going to multiply based on the damage you're dealing. Currently, without any buffs or anything else, it says 505x, but that is actually criminally understated. Let's have a look at it in the training hall. Okay, so you can see inside the training hall, it's just ticking up in how much it's giving me. And if I start up my actual rotation, I just hit something a few times and I just do a few things, you can see it goes up to a massive amount of increased critical damage multiplier on our poison. It just stacks really, really high. With perfect gear, it gets even higher. My gear is definitely not perfect, but I got 2,421x crit strike damage multiplier, which is just absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And that's our talent tree. So very nice. Now looking over at our aspects, we're going to be using the offensive aspects that are listed on the left there. On our gloves, we're going to be using Aspect of Plains Power, which is going to give us a multiplicative damage multiplier per stack of ferocity. And as you saw when I was over here, we get quite a few stacks of ferocity. 14 looks like what I'm at, so 14 times 3.5, pretty dang good. Redirected Force is going to give us critical damage multiplier based on our block stacks. We'll have 100% block through our Armored Hide, plus we'll be getting additional block through Interdiction, which you can see just to the right under defensive aspects. It's going to give us 10x per resolve stack. So 10% block per resolve stack. So our resolve stacks are 27 right now. You can get much higher. My gear is far from perfect. But 27 block stacks, you know, at 10% per, that's 270% block chance, and then multiply that by 87x to get your critical damage multiplier. You can see why it stacks up so high. All right, then we're going to be looking at Conceited Aspect on the ring. This is going to give us a damage multiplier whenever we have barrier, which we will always have. This is for all damage you deal, not just skills, so this is actually really important. Fell Soothsayers is going to give us the ability to apply vulnerable on anything whenever we hit any of our incarnate skills. Our incarnate skills are Counterattack, Armored Hide, and Toxic Skin. So they are going to be pretty much always vulnerable. In addition to that, whenever you land a killing blow on a vulnerable enemy, it's going to explode for a ton of damage, and it just kind of becomes a chain reaction sort of thing. So it's pretty cool. All right, and rune words we're going to be using is going to be Yo-Q, and that's going to be on my chest. It's going to invoke Earthen Bulwark whenever we cast a skill with a cooldown 6 times. You can see that the combat goes pretty quick. If we just hit all those, I instantly have it, right? And you can see how quick I'm rushing Claw. So basically your Earthen Bulwark is always going to be up, and everything you have is a cooldown. So literally every action you take works towards keeping that Earthen Bulwark up. So you should end up having 100% barrier. The other reason you have 100% barrier is because you're going to be counterattacking and dodging things. And then thanks to the Shroud of False Death, you're getting a point into Patient Guard, which is giving you 10% more block chance, more damage. But more importantly, it's giving you Auspicious, which is going to make it so when you don't take damage, you gain a percent of your maximum health as a barrier every second. So that will help plug that extra gap that you're missing from Earthen Bulwark to get you up to 100% at all times. All right, and then the other rune that you're going to be using is Zol Cry, which is whenever you invoke a skill from another class, you cast the subsequent vortex. So we're going to be pulling things in with that pretty much perpetually. On the Paragon tree, let me hide that overlay for us real quick, 1 second. There we go. On the Paragon tree, in the first one, we're going to be taking Menagerist. This gives us a 16x damage on everything we do, but more importantly, it multiplies out our blue nodes in this tree, which is going to be a lot of extra damage to elites, as you can see. And you also get some incarnate damage. Very nice. Up here on the next tree of Convergence, we're going to be grabbing Bane to give us extra poison damage. Bane plus Wildfire. We have to get a combination of those two, at least 150% damage in order to get full benefit from convergence, but as you can see, when you get them maxed out, it's far overkill, so no big deal, right? Convergence is going to give us damage equal to a combination of our top two elemental damages up to 20x, so we'll just basically always have that 20x bonus on, which is great. Coming up into the next tree, actually, I think we went from here over to here, yeah. So the second tree is actually going to be Vicious Shield. Vicious Shield gives you an uncapped damage multiplier. There's going to be a campfire chat this next Tuesday. I'm almost positive they're going to nerf this because it's bugged and doing way too much damage. But basically, by having max shield and stacking max life, you do an absurd amount of extra damage. So that's that. For the node here, we're going to be taking Wildfire. The reason we're taking Wildfire instead of like Ritual or a crit damage multiplier glyph is because it gives us that cooldown reduction whenever we're hitting things. So it's just going to make it that much smoother and make sure that we have our incarnate skills up near 100% of the time, because we want to get that armored hide in particular up as much as we can, so that it gives us that damage bonus and the extra block chance consistently. This also ups the damage of our hunter because it does fire damage, and our rushing claw because it also does fire damage. So it actually does a significant amount of damage in addition to that. After we do the Vicious Shield tree, we're going to come back over and up into the Drive tree. Drive is just going to give us a 30x multiplier basically, because we're always moving, so this is always kind of capped out. So yay, that's nice. We're going to grab Spirit as our glyph on this board because there's a ton of dexterity points here. So let's grab Spirit. Basically, when you're first building this, just activate it, get that 40, and then keep going. Don't start stacking all these extra dex points until you have everything else filled out. That said, once you have everything else filled out, this is kind of like your first Paragon dump glyph. This is where you're going to kind of eke out all that extra damage to push up into the 110s, 120s, 130s. So you want to get every dexterity point here that you can. After that, I would probably go for Bane, because poison damage is pretty important. Menagerous isn't going to do anything putting extra points into it. Wildfire is just going to give you some fire damage, so not that big of a deal. So it's either Bane or it's our other node, which is on our next board, moving over, which is Colossal. And Colossal doesn't really do anything because we're not doing gorilla damage. So really, you're just putting points into Spirit and put points into Bane when you're capping out those Paragon boards. Okay. Moving from Drive, we're going to come over into the final Paragon board, which is Revealing, which is going to give us a 30x multiplier versus enemies that are vulnerable. Or actually, it gives you a lucky hit chance to knock down enemies and make them vulnerable, so crowd control. But it also gives you a 30x multiplier versus anything that's crowd controlled, and we have a pretty high lucky hit chance, so we're going to be hitting this pretty consistently, and we're also going to be tempering some crowd control onto our armor as well, so that we can make sure that this stays up the large majority of the time. That said, on the video gameplay, you're going to see I actually whiffed my temper on my pants, which really sucks because I had a triple crit resolve pants, and then I got crowd control duration instead of like chance to stun or anything like that, which kind of sucks, but whatever, it is what it is. Eventually I'll replace those pants. It's costing me a lot of gold to try to do so. Yeah, and then Colossal is going to give you that damage multiplier per stack of Resolve, and you're going to have lots of stacks of Resolve. 27 times 2, that's 54 damage multiplier, pretty dang good. We're also going to get an additional 12.2x versus close enemies, so it really adds up. Alright, so that's the Paragon board, the aspects, and the rune words. We're going to take a look at the tempers real quick, and then you guys will get to see the gameplay to finish up the video. Of course, we're using a Harlequin's Crest to get extra ranks of stats. You could swap this out for a legendary helm with lots and lots of extra resolve. That's another option. I like the extra ranks, and I also don't have a helm that would do that yet, so c'est la vie. Harlequin's Crest is great. Shroud of False Death is just insanely good. You want to try to get your Masterworks on max life like I did here. I happen to get lucky and get a triple. All stats is also a great stat to get to masterworking on as well. On Harlequin's Crest, you ideally want triple on cooldown, or 2 on cooldown, 1 on max life, or 3 on max life, depending on what your needs are. I wanted the smoothest of gameplay, so I went for cooldown reduction. On the gloves, you're going to be tempering on crit strike damage and vortex size, and you're going to ideally try to hit the crit strike damage as your temper. I did not do so on this. I did get some crit strike chance temper just because my crit strike chance isn't that high in general, and I wanted more than just my toxic skin to be damaged. So I guess you could try to triple crit the crit strike also. That's another option. Not entirely sure what's the best on this. On the pants, you definitely want to triple crit on the temper or on the master working for the resolve stacks though, because it's going to give you a lot of extra damage. So burn your gold, get those resolve stacks. It's actually really important, especially because we're only running 2 pieces of gear that can temper resolve. So it's really important that you get it maxed out on those 2 pieces of gear or as close to as possible to that. Actually, you really just need it on the pants because we're going to want to get ranks of potent on the necklace. So we'll go into that in a second. Pants, you're going to get, or sorry, boots, you're going to want to try to get a pair of boots that have a greater affix for toxic skin. And you're going to want to try to masterwork that up. To get that +8 toxic skin adds a ton of extra damage. Lucky hit chance to crowd control of some sort, stun, freeze, immobilize, etc. I think freeze is probably the best one. I just happened to get stunned before I ran out, so that is what it is. Mobility temper on this is going to be rushing claw charges, just to make it so that whenever you hit your hunter, it's going to kind of refresh those stacks up to 9, so you never run out, even if you have really high attack speed. So that's good. The weapon we're going to be using is going to be the Wushu Nakpa. This is kind of the crux of the build and how everything kind of functions together. Wushu Nakpa, first of all, it's giving us ranks of supremacy. That's a big 110x multiplier, right? But more importantly, whenever we use our ultimate, it's going to give us matching primary spirit hull bonus. So whatever that ultimate is, if it were Devourer, it's going to be giving us an active spirit hull for Devourer whenever we hit it. So if I were to take my points out here, and I were to say Devourer, and I hit R, you can see it's actually activating the Centipede spirit hull, even though my spirit hulls are Jaguar. So I have Centipede and Jaguar primary spirit hulls right now, which is pretty crazy. That said, we're not doing that. We're not doing the Devourer, we're doing the Hunter, because the Hunter does a crazy amount of damage, and it also increases our spirit hull. So right now we're at 15x or 15%, right? I hit my ults and it goes up to 30. So it's doubling your Jaguar spirit hull. It's basically the same thing as having a loyalties mantle on, but you don't have to take the head slot, which is great. It's also making all skills Jaguar as well, so yay. And the other thing that's really, really cool about this unique item is it's changing our hunter skill into not only an ultimate, but also a mobility spell. So by making this a mobility spell, we're getting the benefit from Swift. Mobility cooldowns are reduced by up to 4 seconds based on how far you travel. So check it out. A lot lower cooldown, right? But it doesn't end there, because whenever I use any other mobility spell, it's reducing the cooldown of it. That plus Wildfire, right? Let's say I have everything active, right? You can still see that that one goes down faster than all the others. So you're always going to have Hunter up. You're always going to be able to hit it. It's really cool. And that's thanks to this unique item. So definitely don't sleep on the Wushu Nakpa. Alright. Tempers on the neck, we're going to be grabbing Potent. I actually would have preferred to have triple crit on Potent here instead of getting resolve stacks, because Potent gives us a ton of extra multiplicative damage in our talent tree through the Jaguar skills. That's the one that increases the damage they take from us, which is kind of a separate bucket multiplier. So I would have preferred to get triple crit on Potent, but 2 on Potent and 1 on Resolve is fine as well. We're also going to temper on crit strike damage onto this too. Then on the rings, we want to get crit strike damage and incarnate cooldown. Probably would be best to get the master working on incarnate cooldown. I know that's not what I have here, but that's probably best until you can get 100% uptime on armored hide. And then after that, you'd want to be going for crit strike damage. And it's the same on the other ring. Oh, actually, on the other ring, I did attack speed, because you need to have at least one item with some good attack speed. So triple crit on attack speed on either your gloves or your ring would be nice. And then stat priorities, of course, are to be like dexterity, max health, and then whatever else, like all resist on pants, attack speed, vulnerable damage. Actually, this vulnerable damage should probably be rolled into attack speed or crit damage. I don't know why I have vulnerable damage on there. They're new gloves, I forgot to change them, so that needs to be changed. I think you probably would want crit strike damage if you had a good ring with attack speed, but if not, you can always get that attack speed on the gloves. And then, you know, attack speed, crit strike damage, those are your main scalars. Max life is a main scalar as well, and then resolve is a main scalar. So, alright, hopefully that helps you guys. Check out the gameplay video now, and leave a like, favorite, share, and subscribe down below, and let me know what you think of the build. It does lag here a little bit at the beginning because my game lagged, but then it gets better after a second or so. But yeah, anyway, like, favorite, share, subscribe, comment down below. I look forward to hearing you guys' thoughts on this, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.